So, this is a blockchain hype to production network series organized by Hyperledger and Pune and Hyperledger India and IBM also contributed. So in this 4-week series, in the previous 2 sessions, we discussed about the blockchain production networks globally in India and Asia Pacific. And this upcoming 2 sessions, we have technical deep dive in the Hyperledger Fabric. And for this session, we have Gari Singh and Mark. And Gari Singh, I think all of you know, he's a CTO IBM blockchain platform and contributor and maintainer to the Hyperledger Fabric. He's also a member of technical steering committee who will direct the Hyperledger projects roadmaps. And he's quite active in the Rocket Chat, Hyperledger Rocket Chat, Fabric mailing list, and I think Stack Overflow. And wherever you face any issue, so he's going to respond in both the platforms. So I think there's no introduction required to Gari Singh. So first we start with Gari Singh and then Mark. Mark is a technical architect behind the IBM blockchain platform. So he will also talk about, and we in the today's session we're going to discuss about the technology updates, and then ready to deploy smart contracts in the IBM blockchain repositories, your Fabric samples. So Gari Singh, over to you. Let's start.
Great, thanks very much. So let me try to share my screen here. Hopefully people can see what I've got going on here. All right. That is weird. All right, there we go. Can everybody, can you guys see that? I guess I'll ask the moderators, but yeah. All right, so yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'm only want to take about, 20 minutes or so. This will kind of be a, a whirlwind, pass through. But yeah, so I'm going to break this up into 2 sections, talk a little bit about what we've got going on the Fabric perspective, and then obviously related to Fabric, what we've been doing on the IBM side from a platform perspective. I'm going to focus today on the latter half of the kind of roadmap. I've kind of just picked out a couple of, kind of key features. My assumption is most people know Fabric. If you don't, feel free to reach out, later on, and we can get you, more details on that. You can see we started way back in, 2017, a long time in the internet, a long time ago in the internet and blockchain world. We've made a lot of advances through Fabric, and this year, earlier in the year, we came out with our v2.x release, where we really focused on a couple of capabilities that I'll talk more about, more on the sort of Chaincode governance side, some improvements on the overall private data side, which I think I want to highlight as well. A couple other things to note. We get that have been kind of updated in the last couple of weeks. We see a lot of questions out there, recently, over the years, but more recently, about doing things with assets and tokens. So we actually, I'm going to talk about, like I said, private data, but we actually have put out several updated samples on how to use some of the more advanced capabilities of Fabric in terms of privacy, endorsement policies that are actually really relevant for tokens, token swaps, asset transfer. So those are all under, github.com/hyperledger/fabric-samples. So I'm going to cover those today, and then I'll just give you a quick thing on what we've got coming on the future side, later this year. A couple of things later this year and in early next year. We're going to do a little bit more work on the actual, token side, looking at how we can do some more advanced things on the validation, from a validation perspective, just enhancing our current capabilities. We'll be taking a look at some options around BFT from an ordering service perspective. I'll talk about Raft a little bit later. One big, feature that we have coming, one of the things that wasn't a problem, but becomes a problem now that we have a lot of people actually running, real networks, is ledger checkpoint and pruning. So we need the ability for people to basically kind of checkpoint and archive their ledger. Otherwise, I know we have theoretically unlimited storage in the cloud. But
Gary, can you make your presentation full screen? In presentation screen?
Yeah, let me make it actually. the thing is on the full screen, I'll make it bigger, but on full screen for some reason, because I have two,
Okay. Yeah, got it.
yeah, but I'll try to, I'm sorry, I don't know why I brought this up here, which is weird. Sorry about that, yeah. I can try full screen, but it does kind of mess things up a bit, but hopefully that'll stop.
Yeah,
So,
it's okay now.
with that being said, I will, move forward here. So, what have we been doing what are the key things that I wanted to highlight from, Fabric, 2.x? So one, just a refresher for people who may not be familiar with Fabric, the quick and dirty view. Fabric has a unique model, I'd say, from a perspective of how we process transactions. We essentially have what we call endorsements. Endorsements are essentially a set of policies, really signatures. Who's required to actually agree on the result of a smart contract execution. And really the output of a smart contract is a state change, right? So really what we're talking about is updating some type of state somewhere, and we can have policies that are actually set, on the chain code level. I'll talk a little bit later about a few other enhancements that we've made. You could also set policies on state. And now one of the other new features that I'll talk a little bit about on the private data side is we can actually set policies on kind of collections. So endorsements, collect that up. That all happens before we actually commit anything. We send that to the orderer, and then the orderer will send it to the peers, and then we will execute our commit, right? Which will basically validate the transaction, make sure it's well formed. It actually checks your endorsement policy at that time. So if you didn't have enough people agree according to the policy, agree on the result, we will not commit the state change. And then we have the ability to send out events. So that the reason I mentioned that here is that's important as we talk about some of the new features. One thing that I like to highlight, because I'm not sure, I'm sure most people are aware of this, but again, a lot of people started earlier. When Fabric first came out, for a distributed fault tolerant kind of orderer, we were using Kafka. We still support that, although you'll notice in the 2.x release notes that we've actually deprecated support for Kafka. So once we get to like the 3.x releases sometime next year, that will go away. On the good news side, we have the ability to migrate from Kafka to Raft. The important thing about Raft was that it actually allowed us to distribute the ordering nodes across multiple machines, and even across multiple organizations. So that was a big feature to kind of add in here. Generally people wanted it at least for data center fault tolerance, to distribute across multiple data centers, multiple clouds, et cetera. But you can also have multiple organizations run Raft-based ordering. There's another interesting feature too, that I don't know that everybody kind of knows about. So when we first kind of came up with Fabric, one of the things we wanted to enable was both from a somewhat from a, you can call it some level of privacy, but really it was about segregation of kind of membership, logic, role, whatever it may be, and we called those channels. Channels were essentially, you can think about them as the ability for basically a peer to actually be part of multiple ledgers, if you will. In the old architecture, while we could support, you could actually have, for example, a peer, and that peer could actually communicate with channels from multiple ordering services. Typically, people ended up building a single, somebody running an orderer or a set of ordering nodes, and then that would manage, all of the different channels, on that ordering side. An interesting feature that when we started looking at from a Raft perspective is that while there can still be a single cluster of Raft nodes, so you can do the normal, Raft is a 2F plus 1 for however many faults you want to support, faulty nodes you want to support, figure out the total number you need. So if you want one faulty node, it's 2F plus 1, which equals 3. I'm sure everyone can do the math, but you may get to, let's say you wanted 3 faulty nodes, you get, 7 nodes. The interesting thing that we added in with the raft-based stuff is that on a per channel basis, even if I have, in this case 6, but let's just say I had 7 raft nodes, you actually have the ability to distribute channels across different clusters, different subsets of those raft nodes. So this is actually a pretty powerful construct, both from some level of a separation, some level of privacy, but also from an overall scalability and throughput perspective. So this is one of the big things that I like to highlight this, because I'm not sure a number of people are aware of this. Moving forward, actually, in our in the 2.3 release, which will probably be, I guess it is 4th quarter now, so likely sometime late October, November, somewhere in mid, I'll say mid to late 4th quarter. We're actually going to add the ability to remove this concept of the system channel. We're actually adding a set of new APIs to the orderers from an administration perspective that allows orderers to actually join channels. So from this perspective, you could actually have a single ordering node, and it can actually be part of multiple raft clusters, and those raft clusters won't know about each other. So this is a pretty, again, a pretty powerful feature. And again, starts to move us away from this notion of saying, hey, that we have even though we have the distributed ordering service, it was still kind of a centralized piece, right? There was still this ordering service that all peers kind of talk to. In this model, you could actually get to the point where every organization could actually run a peer and an orderer node, and you could actually join up with different organizations and parties without having to go through a central administration of an overall ordering service. So that feature, there's a RFC out there in the Fabric Hyperledger, github.com/hyperledger/fabric-RFCs that was approved. That's under, as I said, that's under active development right now, and we expect that to be part of the 2.3 release. The other feature I want to mention, and one thing that I've found interesting over times, especially and I'm not here to kind of bash Ethereum, but I think Corda at least handled this, but none of the Ethereum based offerings really, even on the enterprise side, have really addressed the concept of being able to update or upgrade smart contracts. And this is, you can obviously architect things in Ethereum to, have something that manages state, and then a contract around that calls the state, and then you can use, the naming service to create a new contract that calls the same state. But you have to, think about that, well in advance. With Fabric, we've always had the ability to actually update Chaincode, right? We had a kind of a separation between the Chaincode, and it maps to an actual namespace, right? So the data would stay persistent in the namespace, but you could actually upgrade the version of the Chaincode. And then you can actually change the policy around Chaincodes as well, right? You could actually say that for this particular Chaincode, it requires, 3 out of 5 members to actually sign or endorse it. But there were a few gaps. In that there was kind of a super admin and a few other things. Within the 2.x lifecycle, we've actually adopted a model that is much more like the channel model. So from that, and I'll have a few charts on this, but essentially you actually have to collect a number of signatures to actually deploy or instantiate, whatever you want to call it, of an actual Chaincode. And this is good. You can of course go back to the same policy of any admin can do it if you want that. But now you can actually say, hey, before a new Chaincode version gets deployed, you actually will be required to have, this many signatures. The default is defined on the channel level. The other nice point that we added is prior to this, it was kind of a pain because we had a few different policies. So we had, so Chaincode had its own endorsement policy, and then it also had a private data or collection policy, and then you could potentially also have indexes as well for if you wanted to if you were using CouchDB, for example. So now we actually have, separated out the notion of the kind of chain code logic. Oh, also you had to have, technically you had to have the exact same bits and bytes deployed, which was kind of difficult if you didn't, build everything the same way. So what we did in 2.0 is we actually separated this all out. So in theory, it's actually possible to have the same chain code, same logic. You could actually, 3 different people could have it written in 3 different languages if you wanted to. Not sure there's a real use case for that, but just in case someone wanted to, you can. You can also actually have 2 different chain codes, logics actually, and they can represent and map to the same chain code definition. And the other kind of key thing that we added was now you can update endorsement policy without having to update the actual chain code itself. So this is actually a very powerful construct as well. And again, approving that is a workflow that can again require multiple signatures. So in the current case, a single party could actually update the endorsement policy. In the new model, you can actually restrict that to say that again, it must be a majority of the channel admins. The other thing that's not on here is we've always had this on channel policies. So for example, on a channel, you could actually say that to update the channel information required a majority of things. And then, so majority, if you had 5 members, it would dynamically calculate a majority as being 3 out of 5. If you added 7, you could still keep majority and it would be, 4 out of 7 and so on and so forth. Within chain code, it was always explicit. So if you wanted 3 out of 5, you would literally say 3 out of these 5. And it was a static definition. So if I added 2 more members to and that was, your goal was majority. If I added 2 more members to the channel and deployed the chain code to them, the endorsement policy was still actually 3 out of 5. And then you'd have to actually update the endorsement policy. With the 2.0 lifecycle, we actually again have the notion of majority can work, or other things like it. So in that particular case, it'll always be it's dynamically calculated based on actual channel membership. So that's that was one of the I think big innovations for us, a big kind of update that we made. And again, I like to call these out because I think these become important points as logic goes on. I mean, this is probably one of the most people. We do see people, adding members and networks kind of growing, but a majority of stuff is, adding new chain code, updating new versions of chain code, because rules change, logic change, you may have had an error. And again, we think that's one of the key differentiators for us. I'll just go through this kind of quickly. We have a new package command. Packages are now actually much simpler. Underneath the covers, they're actually just standard gzip files, tarballs with a gzip tar files. So again, it becomes much easier for people if you want to actually open it up and inspect it. Before these were serialized protobufs, which was a pain. Again, we still have the install operation. The nice thing on install is that it'll actually build your chain code first now. We used to have this error. Some people might have noticed you could install your chain code and then someone might try to instantiate it and it might fail on instantiation because, I don't know, you were missing a dependency, something wrong with your machine, out of resources. So now on install, we will actually do a build as well to verify, so you'll know immediately whether or not you have an error or issue with the chain code. We then have the ability to, once it's installed, all members must approve the chain code definition. I'll explain how this works, but essentially the underlying functionality here is a set of kind of private data collections that are tied to individual organizations, we call those implicit collections. You don't need to define them on the fly. And this basically allows the ability for you to basically collect votes across the blockchain. Finally, once there's enough signatures meeting the policy, somebody can commit the chain code definition, and now this would be similar to instantiate. And then on upgrade, go through the same process, right? If you needed to. And again, this can be done for, again, you don't necessarily have to repackage the chain code. You could actually, you could actually just be updating policies as well. And so I know I'm going to give Mark some time, so I'm just going to go kind of through this kind of quickly, but This was another kind of big feature that I wanted to sort of call out. And the reason why I mention these is because these really expand the realm of use cases that you can actually do. The other thing I should mention is that with private data collections, you always kind of had to know membership ahead of time. Those were all sort of deployed out there. And you could run into a interesting issue that you still would have to have enough, because endorsement policy was essentially set at a Chaincode level for collections or private data in 1.4.x lifecycle. You actually have to make sure that you still end up with enough endorsers, even if there's not enough people in the collection, which is tricky as well. So within the 2.x model, actually within 2.x, actually it doesn't even matter on the lifecycle, we actually added the ability to now have endorsement policies on collections. So now you can actually create a private collection, and a collection is really, for those who don't know, is really a subspace within a ledger, right? So while a ledger may have 10 members, you may create a collection, a kind of a private collection, and that private collection may only contain 3 out of the 10 members. So now we can actually set the endorsement policies on the collection levels themselves. So again, this really helps to enhance your overall privacy, because now I don't ever have to send it to any peer that didn't have a need to know for the data. As I mentioned, this is actually exploited. This next feature is actually exploited by the how we do the approval process. But essentially, the notion here allows you to actually have your own private collection per organization that you don't have to create. And what this actually allows people to do is you can actually start to, like, you could issue one on your own collection implicitly, and it's actually possible to pass this around to other folks as well, because they might not have the real value, but they'll of course have the hash and the key for it. And now if I needed to share the actual data with somebody else, I can now either add somebody to that collection, or I can move it to another collection. But the proof of that it was correct is still from the hash that you had existing in your actual for the collection, the implicit collection, even if you didn't have the data. So this allows you to do that more sort of selective reveal, that you can actually add people you can actually grant access to a specific piece of kind of state via this moving across kind of collection model. And that's really what this one kind of just shows you about, is this is the next ability here, right? Because the hashes are all there, you now have smart logic that says, hey, in your Chaincode, it would just be kind of a transfer model. And you would of course always select, what collection it came from. You could verify that the values were correct by the hash in the Chaincode itself, because you have access to get those. And now you have access to the real state in a new collection, which now contains multiple members. And lastly, this is more for people who are operators out there. We have a lot of people who want to run stuff on Hyperledger Fabric on Kubernetes. One of the things that we found was Chaincode always required Docker. And for a while, this was okay. You could do some tricks like, bind mount the Docker socket on a Kubernetes node. Of course, this becomes problematic when you move to later versions of Kubernetes that no longer use the Docker socket. So then you have to go to things like running Docker in Docker, or remote Docker hosts. Anyway, needless to say, we now have support for external Chaincode. People can build custom builders, and you can choose to basically launch your Chaincode however you want to. You could choose to launch it as a pod. You could choose to launch it as a binary executable. You could build it however you want and launch it. So this is a great feature to remove the dependency actually on Docker from Fabric overall. So that's that. And then I'm just going to go kind of quickly through here. A little plug for ourselves. So Mark's going to talk about the use cases here, so I won't get into that. But a lot of what we've learned and built from in the platform, and what Mark will talk about too as contracts, comes from all these networks and customers that we've been working with over the years. I just want to highlight real quickly what we do from a IBM perspective. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of policies in Fabric, right? Channel policies, endorsement policies, adding orderers, removing orderers, managing certificates, etc. So what we chose to do from the kind of blockchain platform perspective was really build something that was designed to facilitate the same use of your same Hyperledger Fabric code. So we don't change Hyperledger Fabric, it's just open source Fabric, but we wanted to offer a whole bunch of governance management and operational capabilities. So, and you'll notice that probably why some of the stuff that we do that is on the Kubernetes. We've just seen most people wanting to use kind of Kubernetes. So just a couple of things. Many people think, so I like to dispel a few myths. One, we don't build a special version of Fabric. We actually just use Fabric itself. We compile from pure Hyperledger source code, Hyperledger Fabric source code. We have allowed our platform now to run anywhere on any type of Kubernetes platform. So you can run it on IBM Cloud, AWS, Azure, Google, and we have customers doing all of that. And then we really offer kind of two capabilities on top of that, on top of the deployment. So the deployment is specifically targeted towards Kubernetes environments, but build and operate, will work anywhere. So this was really the kind of deploy anywhere model. We really wanted to, we think Kubernetes is the way forward. It's just the easiest way to orchestrate all the different components you need. And again, this really just says that you can move around from cloud providers to container providers, et cetera. There's no lock-in. And even if you started on, and even from the perspective of you started with IBM, our stuff, if you truly wanted to move away from us to somebody else, again, you can just connect up Fabric nodes, add a new order, you can do things like add new ordering nodes, remove the old ordering nodes, set up a new peer, have it go talk to the existing order, the new ordering service, and you're basically IBM's out of the way. From a tooling perspective, we've been putting out Visual Studio Code. Again, Visual Studio Code itself, our plugin for Visual Studio Code is open source. It works with both IBM blockchain platform and whatever other Hyperledger Fabric images you want to work. It allows you to quickly iteratively test and develop and test smart contracts. If you use our platform, we provide full support for it. If not, it's open source, community based. And then lastly, I'll focus on this is really just kind of where we allow you to see everything. You can maintain credentials, maintain your nodes. You can choose to deploy peers, CAs, orderers. You can manage nodes that are remote from here. So that's really what we've kind of focused on the overall kind of operate perspective. The latest capabilities that'll be coming soon are really around governance and the Chaincode, the Fabric 2.0 Chaincode lifecycle I mentioned. As you can see, it requires you to collect a bunch of signatures and workflow. Same thing for channels. So we have the ability for consoles to connect to other consoles and basically collect all of those signatures and make things easy for you to do. And the top features I'll just call out. So we added in support for Raft. So again, while we have the ability to add, remove, Raft nodes within Fabric, as we mentioned, some of these can be, there's some complexities there. So we've built nice sort of tooling around that. We generally tend to stay on the latest versions of Fabric, as they come out and adopt them in there. We're on 1.4.7 and 2.1.1 now. We'll move to 1.4.9 and 2.2.1. We now fully support Java smart contracts. On the key management side, one thing that we do add support for, while Fabric supports it, it's hard to configure. You can actually choose to use HSMs. And lastly, we've added a whole bunch of stuff around automation for Ansible collections as well. So sorry, I probably ran over a little bit, but I'll stop there, and we can either do questions now, or we can let Mark go and then do questions. I'm open either way. Yeah,
thank you, Gari. So there are a couple of questions, and even I am the user of Fabric from last 4 or 5 years. I have a couple of questions too. First, there is a question: can we run one Chaincode as an external service per organization instead of per peer?
What was that? Sorry, can we run one as?
can we run one chain code as an external service per organization instead of per peer? I think
it might be possible to do that. The main problem is it's always going to, yeah, you'd have to, no, the main problem there is how do you handle, because as you know, Chaincode itself, when it calls get and put state, actually always targets a single peer. So when it sort of connects back, you could possibly combine the feature of creating Chaincode as a server with that. And if you had load balancing, you might be able to load balance against it. But nobody's ever really, we've never really tried that. But yeah, we realize that there's kind of a one-to-one binding of Chaincode to a peer due to the way that it connects up to it.
Okay. So next question, there is a maybe data prune and rotation of ledger data. I think the ledger pruning feature he's talking about.
Yeah, so we have that feature is under development right now. We call it archive and pruning. Essentially, the basically way that it works is you know the main thing that you need to keep around is the last known value of any state. Right, so you may have had 1 million blocks, but in the end of the day, it resulted in whatever 10,000 keys with 10,000 values, let's just say. So yeah, that feature is under development right now, and the way that it works is we basically checkpoint the state. So essentially, we take a dump of the latest values, the current values of every key in the state database, and we essentially take a dump of that, create a hash for that. And then we actually use that hash as the beginning of a kind of a new checkpoint block. So once you have that, you can then archive all the rest of the blocks prior to that block. You might want to keep them around, but from all practical purposes, you get it's essentially a new Genesis block based off of the current state at the time you took the snapshot.
Okay. There is one question for Sarah regarding the BFT support in the roadmap, like when it's available.
It's unclear at this point. I mean, we don't get a lot of demand for it. So there's a proposal out there that was some work done with smart BFT. So we're investigating a few protocols, but I wouldn't expect it it's probably 12 months out. Okay.
And so I have my personal questions because I am using Fabric from last 4 years, starting with 0.5 while working with IBM. So there are a couple of RFCs, like there's a modular crypto module, like suppose the SH256 or some kind of that one. So when it will support the different crypto modules?
So we have to go through and figure out. So like for example, it's always, are you looking to use different algorithms or?
Yeah, different algorithms.
Yeah, I think, so we kind of, we sort of have, obviously had that in 1.4, but it didn't work out as well. So yeah, we have to go, that RFC requires a bunch of work to actually go through and figure out where we want to, where all the different plug points are. If it's specific to just like the signing and stuff like that, that's a little bit easier. It gets more complicated if people want to change things for like TLS. But yeah, I'd expect us to I'd expect a design in the next couple months, and then hopefully it shouldn't be too hard to implement. Yeah, and if you have specific features or whatever that you're sort of looking at, because also it may be possible to actually just add additional crypto algorithms to the current one, right? It kind of just depends, right, on whether they kind of fit in with the current model or not.
And Gary, I think there's some fundamental work in the foundation itself to kind of standardize across all the projects. So I think you're doing some of that work as well, right?
Yeah, there's URSA, but that's really more like the implementation side. Yeah, I think the other thing we're looking at is, one other module. We support, the PKCS11 stuff, but obviously we only support that underneath for the standard crypto that we have. We're looking at maybe one other option where we might just abstract out the to make calls to sign. So we have to figure out the full design. But yeah, the more requirements that people have, how much it would be great to see what you're actually trying to do.
Yeah.
So we can make sure that we cover.
Yeah, and there is a one, I think, RFC regarding the WSM support for the smart contract. So how you will see the importance of the WSM support in the Chaincode writing?
Oh, the which one? The WASM support or the?
Yeah, WASM support.
Yeah, that one. So we're also doing another experiment on the WASM side to plug it in. First, we want to check out also plugging it in where we used to have plugins. So we have like, validation plugins, endorsement plugins, etc. So we're going to start kicking that work off soon too. The problem with WASM is just making sure that we can actually that it can stand up under concurrent use and things like that. So, but again, I expect that over the next few months that should mature more for us. I'm a big fan of it. It'll probably end up being Rust first. Go is trickier, right? Maybe Rust and assembly script probably.
Yeah. And any update on Fab token, because I think it was earlier released and then taken back. And there's a question from the community.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out we don't really. It turns out we don't necessarily really even need Fab token. I think that was I think we tried it out. We probably never should have released it. I think I would advise people to kind of take a look at so what we're really doing is doing a lot more of showing people how they can actually do assets and tokens with Fabric. I think we threw people off when we said Fab token. And then, I think if as any gaps come up, if we need to add anything in validation, we will. So I don't think we'll actually have anything called Fab token per se again. I think it's, we looked at it as saying, hey, look, we actually have most of the building blocks here. And especially some of the stuff that we've now added on the privacy side. So, yeah, I mean, I would just look at, more of the samples and things like that. And then if people have specific use cases that we can't do, it would be great to know those, but, I'm pretty sure we're well covered. So I think we're just going to see more of we'll just start producing more and more kind of samples or examples for people of how to actually do this stuff. Cause I think we didn't do a good job of it, right? Up till now.
Okay, and there is a question regarding the Fabric release. I suppose there is a 1.4 and 2.x, I think recently released. So is there any plan to discontinue the 1.4 maybe support because of the LTS? Now the 2. Is the LTS now. So tell how much. And
so I think we said 9 months, I think, right? From the time of, I think it was like a 9-month crossover.
Okay, means after 9 months, maybe 1.4 is not going to support by the Fabric in the open source, right?
Right, on the open source side. Yeah. I mean, we just make, we may, but I guess there's no commitment, right? I mean, more or less it just says that we won't be, we're not committing to going back and fixing, to fixing bugs on there. I think, people really probably should start moving forward to 2.x. But it's an important point actually you bring up, right? I think, one piece of advice I have for people is you really need to keep moving forward with Fabric. I think getting stuck on older versions, right? You have to always think about, a point in time and then where you're going, right? And what's going to be around when you get there, right? I think sometimes people start out on a project and then it's like 3 or 4 months and we might already have another release. We are going to slow down a little bit on you'll see on 2.x, so for example, we probably rushed 2.1 and 2.2. We wanted to get a long-term support, so that's why 2.2 came out. But we were doing quarterly. We're probably no longer going to do quarterly. It'll probably be every 4 to 5 months with previews in between. We found that people like to pick up collections of features at a time rather than incremental features. And plus, we don't want everybody to have to upgrade every month, right?
So actually what happening, because technology Fabric is matured so much in the last 1 or 2 years, with lots of features added. So people are not moving that much adaptable to the new, because there's lots of change in 2.0, which is not in the 1.4. Maybe let's suppose a new programming model, new APIs, new SDKs, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, although I mean, most of the stuff's compatible, still compatible, right? Even moving to 2.x, right? That's in there. But I just think, yeah, I mean, if you can keep, on some of keeping up with some of the improvements, but even, I think moving it even on those sort of, 1.4 and whatever, timeline, but I think people should start moving to, 2.x, at this point.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Gary. It's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so next we have Mark, and Mark is he's an IBM blockchain platform technical architect, global technical architect, and he's the man behind the IBM blockchain platform. So over to you, Mark.
Hey everybody. Yeah, a lot of great conversation and everything in there. I'm just going to kind of feed off of what Gary was talking about a bit and show you in an accelerated fashion how to actually get started really quickly with using Hyperledger Fabric. And as Gary showed, we have that chart, that stack architecture that has Hyperledger Fabric at its core and the IBM blockchain platform of that set of tools and the abilities. And he touched on Ansible, he touched on the VS Code. I want to talk about that entire end-to-end story a bit. So first, I'm going to show you a little bit about the IBM blockchain platform so you can see it kind of live. So I'm running live here. Then I'll show you some of the front end, and then I will show you some of the back end pieces to really complete that entire story. And so here is exactly what Gary was showing on a couple of slides. Let me actually try to, hopefully this doesn't get too bad, but I'm going to decrease this a little bit. So this is an active live running network. Gary showed a slide that had one specific set of nodes in here. You can see all of the Fabric nodes that make up a Hyperledger network, Hyperledger Fabric network are here and available to create. So you can just simply add whatever particular node that you want to your organization. And it's simple, few clicks of a button. Let me reduce this. A few simple clicks of a button, and it can give you all of the information that you need to do. You just type in whatever you want. You can select if you want to use an HSM, your particular resources that you're going to allocate to the containers of the CA and all of the regular database settings. And then simply do a click add here, and it will go out and deploy wherever you're doing that. And again, you can deploy this anywhere. So as Gary said, you can deploy this on-prem, you can deploy it on any Kubernetes 1.15 or higher. So, AKS, EKS, wherever you want to go. And we have the ability to not only see the peers, but you can check out all of the channels and all of the information that's associated, say, in these particular channels, including the members on the channel, the ordering service that it's connected to, so on and so forth. And again, I'm talking really fast because I know that we're running out of time. But you can see all of the smart contracts that you have installed and instantiated. It also gives you a nice little flag. As Gary was saying, one of the features and great things about Fabric is that you can update the contracts independent of the other pieces. So right here, it tells you that you have an installed contract that is above the version that you have instantiated. So you can simply click that and move those up. You have all of your identities in your wallet and all of your MSP. Yes, I know everybody loves MSP as a name, and here they all are. So this is exactly where Gary was saying, you can bring in the nodes and look into specific consoles and gather all of your nodes that you have access to and actually see what's happening. You do that by downloading the connection profile and then importing it into that other console. So it's really simple, really easy to use, and you can see how quick it's done. Now, we have a bunch of information here under the getting started. I would say if you kind of go into the develop piece and the deploy piece of the smart contracts, then you're really kind of thinking in that developer mindset, and a lot of good information and videos here. And then here's your operator type of pieces of how you're actually going to build your network out, how you're going to manage it, how you're going to continue to operate and grow your resources along with your actual consortium. So that's a quick run through on the platform. And so if you think about what you're doing here, you're getting an easy to use tool set to manage everything that you want to do with with the untouched, unaltered Hyperledger Fabric code base that we build upon. Not only that, but you're also getting people like Gary standing side by side with you, supporting your efforts as you're moving down. So it's a big, big deal when you have folks that have the knowledge, know Fabric inside and out, to be standing along and helping you on your journey. So this is what I would consider kind of that middle to the right side, or the operator to the grow side of the journey. I want to talk a little bit about the beginning side. So as we were talking about earlier, you have the VS Code extension. Here is the VS Code extension with one of our quick starter or accelerators that we're calling our blockchain accelerator patterns, or whatever you want to call it. These are real little applications with the Chaincode and everything you need to get a sample up and running. And so you can get the Chaincode, you can get the app, you can just run it locally, you can connect it to IBM blockchain platform network, or whatever you want to do. And it's really easy to do. When you get the code, you usually have your you got your client side, you got your server side, you get, as I mentioned, all of the basic Chaincode, and a lot of it uses the same thing that's kind of built out when you use the VS Code extension tutorials. If you've not used the VS Code plugin yet, you do a couple of things. The first thing it does is it downloads an entire version of Hyperledger Fabric, and it runs it on your local machine. So this gives you the ability to create smart contracts, iterate on it, continue to submit transactions to your local environment, get it right, and then you can connect your extension to an external network. That can be a Fabric, native Fabric Community Edition, or the IBP network. And then you can install and instantiate the Chaincode from there and submit transactions against that. So if you're thinking from a developer standpoint, this is your front end, or your beginning point of where you're going to start to actually do real things. Going through that tutorial, I would say it's going to probably take you about 35 minutes to an hour to go through, because it's going to walk you through all of these different functions, right? Query an asset, check your assets, query everything, add users, everything that you need to do in a very basic smart contract. After you do that, you can build POCs through this within just a couple of minutes, right? Because all you're basically doing is a 3-stroke method, and then naming your asset. It will give you the basics out there. You can even go out and get some of like Dave Enyart's advanced sample Chaincode, which is really high grade examples of stuff that could be, virtually production grade types of Chaincode out there. Alter that to what you need, and then you have moving into true production. And it's all just very easily done. Now, when I was talking about the different aspects of the VS Code extension, when you get it, this is the little symbol for the IBM blockchain platform. You can see here, this first little box, that's your smart contract piece that will package all of the open projects that you have, and also keep a history of all of the Chaincode that you have. I am now upgrading, there we go. All right, so you can see right here, I have a list of different Chaincodes that I have packaged up and ready to go. Here are the different gateways that I can actually log into. So for instance, I can log into my local gateway here. You can see I have 3 different gateways that are all IBP or IBM Blockchain Platform gateways that they're connected to. Once this actually connects, I'll be able to, get into the, still logging on, hang on. All right, once that comes in, I'll come back to this in a second, but I'll show you that I can actually see all of the channels and bits that are in there. And let's see. I want to actually show you, I was talking about the patterns. So let's get into some of these patterns. If I go into my Fabric network here, check in this particular channel, you'll see that I have block 77 here, which has, looks like Cosmo Kramer created a user in one of our particular code patterns, because this is connected to a set of code patterns. When I say code patterns, if you go out and just search for IBM blockchain platform code patterns. This is going to be renamed to accelerators because code patterns is kind of a weird thing, not really understand what that means necessarily, but you'll see we have all of the, again, these are all free to take, free to use, different little assets for different types of things. We have everything from, say, e-voting to basic supply chain to IoT devices to simple assets. Let's look at this one actually. Build an asset, digital asset, and manage it. When you go into this, this will give you several things. It gives you your code, which I didn't mean to click on, but gives you your code from your code, the Git repo, so you can grab all of it right here. You can click on a intro and a demo, and basically that's the developer of this particular demo. They walk you through exactly what it looks like and how to do it, and a setup of how to do the network. And then in here, you'll see exactly the entire flow of everything that you're going to use. So you're going to have to build out, you know, a little mail server, get some cloud object storage, of course, the IBM blockchain platform node, etc. And you can see you have the user, gives you the app, the actual backend server, the network, and all built on, of course, Kubernetes in this layer, and then the information that you can build out as an operator. And it gives you everything you need here in your step-by-step flow to build this entire thing. Now, this will take you probably, I would say maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours to do, because there's quite a bit of setup and getting of different services. But if you think about it, getting a full application for nothing in 2 hours really isn't that bad of a deal. So feel free, again, go out there, grab any of these code patterns, and let me show you. Actually, I'll show you this specific one because I still have it up and running. This is the particular application that I was just showing you. So this is just a simple app that shows you. Let's actually log in here. We'll create a quick user, H&G. You'll see that I can register through this. I mean, this is nice to have just a nice front end to give a quick visual so you can see that I have now registered with this user. I can log in. Gives you a list of all the digital assets that we currently have on the ledger, and who has actually the current owner, can do different things with it. I can add different ones. So if I say I want to upload a new asset, I just have to find something. Hopefully I don't pick a big zip file like I have before. There we go. We'll do a JPEG, so it won't take so long. I can upload this guy. Go back, and you'll see this is what I just uploaded. You get the asset identity. You get it when I put it on, and you can do alterations. I can transfer it to other people. You get the idea, right? So it gives you a nice basic application built on the Hyperledger Fabric code base. Here's another one. I know that a lot of people in the US are very interested in this one right now. Presidential elections, would say. So we have, if I register, yeah. So if I register under a user, one of the key things around this is, so I've just registered this voter. If I actually try to re-register this user, you'll see it actually checks. So that's a key thing, right? There's a lot of discussions about fraud in voting, which is currently going on. Gives you kind of a quick little, who do you want to actually vote for? So you put that in there, you validate who you actually are, put the poll in, check it out, it says it's there, then you can get some quick poll results. See who's actually in the lead. It looks like the independents are in the lead. I got a little bug here. My little graphs didn't show up, but you get the point there. All right, so now I've showed you really quick the middle part, which is the IBM blockchain platform, the front end, which is the VS Code extension, or you can use Code Ready Workspaces. That is also available. And on the back end or the front end, the Ansible piece that was discussed earlier. So if you go out to Ansible Galaxy, you can do a quick search for the IBM blockchain platform. And you'll be able to see the downloads that you want here to be able to run Ansible scripts. This will help you tremendously when you're doing stuff, say you want to do stuff out on the IBM cloud. You want to bring up and tear down networks really quick just to do tests, create these playbooks, use Ansible. It'll help you a tremendous amount, and you don't have to keep networks up and running and just, exhaust your resources for no reason. So, all right, I got it all in with 1 minute to spare. So hopefully this gave you a quick overview. I'm almost out of breath, but wanted to show you all this. Are there any questions or comments from anybody that I may have missed? Let's see, let me check the Q&A here.
The front end is getting connected to blockchain.
Yeah. So basically, we're just using the connection profile, and it's using APIs to connect in at the end of the day. So yeah, please check these accelerators out. You're gonna love them. There's many different use cases out there. We're actually starting, so if you develop some use cases, we want to get these guys out on there. So if you want to advertise some of your work and promote yourself as a good contributor and developer of some of these, please feel free to let me know. I will help you get this stuff posted out there. We're making some big changes. We're creating what's called an IBM blockchain community. So similar to what you see under the Hyperledger umbrella for everything that's Fabric related, you're going to see a community on IBM for everything that's IBM blockchain platform related. So you can develop applications on IBP, and we can post those out there, and give you some advertisements and things of that nature. So look for that. That'll be coming out late October at the latest. Any other questions or comments? And if you want to know more, we have a bi-weekly web series that Barry Moskowski and I host. We talk about some of the different features and stuff. Of course, we follow everything that happens in the community. So as that's released into the community, we try to get it into IBP as quickly as possible, as Gary mentioned. And we try to show the new features and functions and things of that nature on that webcast series. So please join us. You can follow me at MeetMarkP on Twitter. And I usually post those times and dates and the topics that we're going to be talking about. So we have that as well. We have office hours again through the community. So we're here for you, and that's what we want to do. We want to help support you through your complete journey here. Yeah, and all these code patterns are actually open source and free. Absolutely. Anybody can use it. Yep. Yeah. Well, that's, I know I've seen you on the user series and quite often, so it's great to to be on yours. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Mark too, and it's a really great session and great learning for all. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for spending their Friday evening, late evening, and maybe Saturday morning with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Keep safe.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so I can end the session right now? Yep. Yeah, okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamlesh.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.